Yep, in a different life, I would be singing that song for real. Okay, today is going to be a little bit different day. It's going to be way more scripted than a lot of other days. It's going to include some kind of bonus content, and it's also kind of it's my thoughts on something that I came across. And that thing was a Facebook post. I am in several Facebook groups where people post about personal finance, and this was a business owner saying that they wanted to help their employees with personal finance. And they said, what would you guys recommend? So I said I'd recommend buying all their employees a copy of Dave Ramsey's book, The Total Money Makeover, which is, I think it came out in 94, so it's over 20 years old, and it covers all of the basics. It's, relatively speaking, a pretty short book, and it's a very practical book. I also like it because it ties in with all of Dave Ramsey's other stuff. He's got thousands of hours of his radio program where he applies his principles to a huge number of real-life situations. His content is available on CDs, online streaming, DVD. He's got classes held in churches in real life. He's got books, and he's got an app for iOS and Android. So there's a lot of free content that once you start working his program helps you get across the finish line, either by encouraging you or by giving you implementation details. So there were 3 people that liked my suggestion of his book, and then someone commented afterwards. They said, I don't think that anyone should, I think you should stay away from anything that preaches anything except personal finance. That was the comment after mine, because Dave Ramsey comes from a Christian point of view. And 19 people like that comment. So this is interesting to me. So 3 people are like, yeah, I think this book is good. 19 are like, nope, stay away from religion when it comes to personal finance. And I wondered what a good non-religious program would be. So I asked that author, I just said, what would a good non-religious program be? And he said, it really depends on what's available in the area. If the employees are already gung-ho to save, a book might be the answer. If not, a short seminar that's engaging for newbies with provided food would likely draw the most employees. All right, so as far as I'm concerned, this is a craptastic answer. If the people were gung-ho to save, then you wouldn't need to do this in the first place. The statistics show that there are very few people who are gung-ho to save. And B, it's easy to say, yeah, just find an engaging seminar for newbies in your area. But if there were so many engaging seminars for newbies, we wouldn't have such a big problem with personal finance. So this is what I wanted to discuss today. I want to discuss why I'm a fan of Dave Ramsey. I want to discuss what I find wrong with other financial gurus, and kind of what that looks like. So the first thing I want to show you is I'm obviously not going to read the whole book, but I want to show you an example of I think like Dave Ramsey's style. Okay, so this is the book that comes with his Financial Peace University class. It's very similar to the Total Money Makeover, but it's written to like follow along with the class. You're supposed to read it as you go through the class, and I just want to point out some things here. Getting through the introduction. Chapter 1, first page, super saving. And then here's a quote. From me, hitting rock bottom was the wake-up call I needed to get my financial act together. From that point on, I was on a quest to find out everything I could about God's and Grandma's ways of handling money. So, first page, chapter 1, he's broken out the God. All right, there's some God already in here. And we turn the page, and so that was page 5, that, is the first page of the first chapter. Turn one page, page 7, you got the bottom there, baby step 1, baby step 2, baby step 3. Okay, so these are his 7 baby steps right there. And the practical things you need to do are encapsulated all in these 7 steps. So he's given you essentially the roadmap for the entire program, which takes up, let's see, this isn't exactly 7 lines. This is probably, looks like 10 lines. Takes up 10 lines. And the rest of the book is basically just detail and motivation around those 10 lines, around those 7 steps that you need to do. You know, if we go one page beyond the 7 steps, we flip the page again. He has a different quote here. He says, some people have a broken mindset when it comes to wealth. They think that having money is somehow evil or wrong. That's a huge misreading of Scripture. The Bible doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. It says that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Point is, whatever you think of that quote, the point is that from the very beginning of the book, he's tying his program in with Christianity. And, you know, having taken the class, having read the books, he does this, but he's not pushing Christianity on people. He doesn't say anywhere in these books, if you're not Christian, you're evil. He only says, this is how quotes from the Bible relate to money. This is what God thinks you should do. I'm a Christian, so this is what I'm doing. That's it. He's not pushy about it. And so that's how he rolls, right? He's, you know, does he say ultra? I don't think he says ultra practical. Maybe he says super practical. Maybe he does say ultra practical. I don't remember. Anyway, he is like very oriented toward real life situations, and he's also very clear that at the end of the day, you're following his program for God. That's his angle on it, that you are managing your money for God, and these principles that you're putting into practice don't come from Dave Ramsey. They come from a supernatural God. All right, let's take another financial person and kind of what they do at the beginning of their program. So the next one I'm going to show is Suze Orman. I'm going to show a short clip from her program, which is, let's see, do I have this DVD hanging around here? I hope that I had it on my desk, but there we go. Okay, so this is the 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. This is her DVD. It's a DVD version of her book, which I also have hanging out over there. Haven't read yet, but, you know, they're modeled after each other. So at the, you know, what she says in the beginning of her book is she says that people don't manage their money well because they're afraid of money. They're afraid of it. And that the solution to fear is to make up a truth about yourself and to repeat it. So here she is, and I'm going to play this clip. All right, so that's Suze Orman and her solution to fear. is to make up some bullshit and repeat it over and over again. And that's what she says worked for her. Okie doke. The first point I want to make after looking at those is that change is hard. And if you don't have a really compelling reason to change, you're not going to change. Most people fail at, weight loss programs, at financial programs, debt payback programs, because they can't even agree to start the program. They can't even agree to stick with it because it's just not that important to them. And so if you're following a program or if you're designing a program, if you can't get past that decision phase, if you can't connect people or connect yourself with a reason to change that totally dominates your thinking, nothing's going to go anywhere. And the thing is that those reasons for change are different for everybody. Because everybody has a different background, a different past, and everyone has different things that motivate their current behavior. So you've got, some people who have a trauma in their past and that they respond to it by spending their life trying to come back from that trauma. So they spend their life trying to get good grades, get out of a bad neighborhood, going to a good college, earning a lot of money, and then they go back and build a foundation to help other kids get out of that neighborhood. Or maybe you grew up in a poor neighborhood and you're just pissed off for the rest of your life that you were born to a poor family, and you blame people. You spend a lot of time talking about that. Or maybe you grew up in a poor neighborhood and you get out, but you spend your money on things that just make you not look poor. And so that's what drives you, is that, I'll never be poor if I have a car, a better car, a house, trade up in house. And you're constantly running from that old situation by upgrading your spending. So there's a lot of different ways that people cope with things that happened in the past. There's a lot of different paths that people take. And the paths are constantly changing. As things happen in your life, the way that you view your past changes, and the decisions that you make to try and reach your next milestone, those also change. And sometimes we spend time on things that doesn't give us a kind of immediate payoff, but just builds up good feelings. And sometimes, we spend time trying to get some milestone, and when we get there, we thought we would feel really good, and we don't. And as a result, we say, well, that didn't work. What's my next milestone? So we make up something else, and now we're changing that new thing. We're chasing that new thing. The thing is, there's only so many kind of chases that we're going to be able to do before we die. So we want to pick good chases while we're alive. We don't want to, go through a rat race of consumption upgrade chases that aren't going to give us a durable happiness. But that's exactly what we're doing. Again, when we look at the retirement statistics, 60% are completely broke when they retire. Another 20% are rapidly diminishing the inadequate funds they have. And then the top 20%, they make it. The survey I pointed out in one of the first videos, 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Motivationally, what's pushing most people forward in life is not working for them. Either because it's a weak motivation and they're just kind of floating along, or because they have a great noble motivation, but they haven't planned it out, they don't know the details, so they can't really effectively execute it. Or they have a very clear, planned out motivation, but it's going to something that when they finally get there, it's not going to give them the payoff they expect. They'll get that Lamborghini and they'll like it for a week, 2 weeks, and then, it's back onto the hedonic treadmill. And I like this word. They have a clear motivation, but it's evanescent. It's a good SAT word. Soon passing out of sight, memory, or existence. So, to get out of this rut, you got to change your motivation. And you have to realize that you need to change your motivation. The thing is that changing a motivation like that, that's a very deep identity, personal thing. And, Suze Orman likely doesn't have the kind of emotional stature in your life to speak into you changing the fundamental motivation of what gets you up in the morning and what keeps you going. And frankly, neither does Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey himself does not have that kind of voice in a person's life. And so as a result, the default motivation comes from all the marketing that we consume. And the marketing says, buy, upgrade. And so that's what people keep doing. But I got to say, Dave Ramsey's got something going for him that Suze Orman doesn't, which is that Dave Ramsey isn't appealing to Dave Ramsey. He's appealing to a supernatural almighty God, right? And the supernatural almighty God, for many people, does have the voice to speak into people's lives. So when it comes to motivating people, which is the very first thing that needs to happen, he's got an advantage there, because by tying his program into the comprehensive philosophy of life that that particular religion has, he has a head start on connecting with people in a much deeper way than Suze Orman or a lot of these other financial gurus. Religion, when it comes to motivation, has its shit squared away. It's not really important what religion I'm talking about. If we're talking about Islam or Unitarian Universalism, they all have similar characteristics. All right? They all have money, which they can use to take actions and do things when they decide that things need to get done. They all have buildings and venues where they can hold events and they can gather people together. They have influential, studied people, the rabbis and the pastors and the imams, who, have organized messages that they deliver to these people over and over again. And because these people are gathering together to listen to those messages, you have communities of people who are working together to follow that message. And that's all supported by extensive, long-lived, and analyzed texts that are frameworks touching how you should live your life in all kinds of different areas. So this is a very powerful system when it comes to changing people's habits. I told you before, it either takes trauma or it takes a group of people to change a habit. And, the trauma part, we can't traumatize people to motivate them. But religions have a built-in community to help people change their habits in certain ways. So they're really good at it, in addition to all these other things. If you take away all of these things that religion provides, the money, the buildings, the influential studied people, the communities of people, the texts that have been analyzed, what do you have left? You've got someone sitting alone in a room with a kind of sense of existential dread, because, again, religions, it's like an easy bake oven for a life philosophy. And if you don't have that, it's going to take time to build that yourself. And you're going to have to do a lot of studying yourself to get it before you can even start about having that framework motivate you in a certain direction. And even if you do manage to build a framework, that doesn't mean that your personal framework that you developed already has a community of people who think the same way are going to call you up and hold you accountable. And again, change is hard. And a lot of times the changes that we make are not pleasant changes. If you're personally developing a framework, what's the likelihood that you're going to put really difficult, upsetting things in your framework rather than you're going to kind of rationalize your lifestyle and include it in the framework so you don't have to change? It's a risky proposition, and so, point is, for number two, religions already have this stuff pre-packaged in a way that's easy to consume and a lot less difficult than coming up with it yourself. The last point I want to make is that making changes around money, meaningful changes around money, requires a person not really to decide they want to change their money, but that they want to change their life. It's not just that I don't, want to be in debt anymore, or I want, a sports car when I'm 50. It can't be that, because those by themselves aren't emotionally compelling enough to drive people toward action. Instead, you have to say something more like, I don't want to be starving when I'm 60. And that's a different thing than money. That's a lifestyle thing. Or I want to leave, a family foundation to help people in my old neighborhood. That's not a money thing. That's a foundation. That's something you want to do for other people. And when it comes to interacting with other people, doing things with other people, religions have, again, this formed, coherent philosophy of life. And they bring the change into a realm that Suze Orman, with her make up your own truth, it can't touch. If you read scriptures of different religions, they're talking about ultimate mega battles between good and evil and the creation of the universe. And these places that we go after we die that are either really good or really bad. And, what happens after you die, that's not even in the realm of these kind of neutral, spend less than you make kind of number arguments. And if we look at, kind of the ways that religion helps people, because they touch all these different parts of life, we'll see that religion helps people, with addiction, the 12-step programs, people saying, I am powerless, and I'm handing my addiction over to God. If you look in Dave Ramsey's book, he basically says, I'm powerless over my money problems, I'm going to hand it over to God, and then he refers to scripture a bunch. So we've got addiction, we have relationships, and we have money. And these things are all connected together when we're, looking at motivation to make changes around money, and just motivations to make big changes in our life. Religion touches all those, and you can also see this cubic that I formed a long time ago without even really thinking about religion. It's got all those in there. It's got addiction, it's got connections and power, and these are your relationships with other people. That's your connections, and the whole thing is like how to get money, wealth going upward. So point is, religion and religious ideas fit in very well with what we've been talking about, and with moving yourself forward on a wealth scale. So I think if you're trying to motivate yourself to make a big change in your life, or to fix something in your life, if you're not addressing these bigger questions about what's the meaning of your life that religion touches, it's like walking with no legs, because money touches so many different parts of life that if your life philosophy is a mess, the money can't work out because it doesn't know where to go, because you haven't made decisions around all these different things that you want to do and why you want to do them and everything like that. It's a very personal topic. It gets into some very uncomfortable areas very quickly. So, my intention here, all right, for the people watching, all three of you, is not that, get a dice and roll it and, whatever the result is, that's the religion you go and join. I'm not particularly religious myself. But I have noticed studying this stuff that religious teachings deserve attention, and they really shortcut the research for durable happiness. And so seek them out. You don't have to agree with them. It doesn't have to be, something that you grew up with. It doesn't have to be something that you're familiar with. It doesn't even need to be particularly focused. Just Google money in Islam, money in Judaism, money in Christianity, and just see what you find, and see, regardless of all the supernatural stuff or regardless of all the creation story stuff, see if you agree with those ideas, if they resonate with you. And I think it'll be really helpful. And the fact that Dave Ramsey brings that stuff in really early in his programs, I think is incredibly helpful for people, because even if you don't agree with everything he says, he's giving you a starting off point, a jumping point for you to begin thinking more comprehensively about what do you believe. And if not what he says, then what else and why and what supports that. I do think that a lot of these structural things, especially the community of people. Come on, where'd we go? I lost it. Communities of people working together. I think they're really helpful in terms of getting across the finish line. If you don't have them and you're not in any kind of community, it's easy to get isolated. It's easy to not really know how everything fits together, and to not be convinced that you need to keep going in the same very specific direction. There's a number of financial help books that I see, and they're very wishy-washy in their advice. They'll say something like, here are 3 things and do what's right for you. And I think that for people who are in, especially in kind of panicky financial situations where they've got $300,000 of debt and creditors calling them all the time and 2 lawsuits, you don't want to hear something like, do one of these three things depending upon what your situation. You want to hear, this is the thing you need to go towards, run. And then you want encouragement to get there. And that's, and that's why I find that this suggestion up here for this Facebook post, that you should not touch, religion when you're discussing money, I think it's a bad idea. Because I think that if you're trying to develop this neutral, sterile approach to discussing personal finance, you're going to miss this motivational component that underlies all of it. And a lot of people are just going to fall off the horse and never get engaged. And so if I have the choice between some subset of people getting offended because a religion is mentioned, or some huge number are broke when they're old and suffer from all the things that come with being broke, like hunger and bed sores and the social isolation of poverty, I'm going to pick the religion. I'd rather lose people who don't want to even hear about religion than fail to motivate people who are okay with hearing what different people have to say and are ultimately helped in forming their own life philosophy and their own motivation about how to move forward. Because statistically speaking, everything is already really bad. And so the number one thing is just how can we get the maximum number of people across the finish line when it comes to having some wealth when they get old, and knowing how to manage their spending, knowing how to manage their investing, and knowing how to use money to connect with people and be happy on their deathbed with how they live their life and how they managed money. In future videos, I'm very interested in talking about what different religions think about money, think about charitable giving. Don't need to go into it here. I'm not particularly focused on one religion or the other. That's not the point for me. The point is just that I think it's some really time-tested, widespread, relevant material, and it would be foolish not to bring it into a personal finance education and a discussion of money. So, yep, that's it. That's my entire rant for today. A little bit different from yesterday when it was kind of budgets and numbers. No idea what I'll do tomorrow yet, but hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great Saturday. Have a great weekend.